Welcome to Proto Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guests' careers to the invaluable advice that fueled their success. We are here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspective that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Proto Conversations. Today, we're fortunate enough to spotlight Stacey Feldman, a trailblazer in the accounting world and partner COO at FullSend Finance. Stacey's journey began when she accepted the challenge to major in accounting. Opting for diverse finance and startup opportunities over Big Four offers, Stacey's first significant role at PopSockets was pivotal, helping scale the company to a $300 million enterprise. At FullSend Finance, she leverages her accounting acumen and entrepreneurial spirit to empower the early stage and VC-backed startups, focusing on insightful reporting and effective communication. An advocate for utilizing advanced technology, Stacey is committed to keeping her firm at the cutting edge. Beyond the balance sheet, Stacey is an outdoor enthusiast, enjoying mountain biking, skiing, and hiking, which reflect her dynamic and adventurous personality. Today we'll delve into how Stacey has redefined success and transformed financial operations, inspiring all who aspire to make a meaningful impact in the accounting sector. Welcome, Stacey.
What an intro, Zane. Thank you.
You know, it's easy when my guests are so impressive, like you, and really the whole crew over there at FullSend Finance.
We're having a lot of fun.
No, it is. It's sort of, I feel like, Roman was the first one of the group that sort of popped up on my radar, and now you guys are everywhere. I go to a conference, there's at least one of you. Most of the time, most of you. You guys are making waves on all sorts of podcasts, showing up on my timelines, no matter what the social media is. And it's really great to see a group of professionals that are bringing their, I guess, dynamic personalities to the forefront and showing people that, not all accountings are, old boring men like me, but they do have some personality. They have a lot of ambition and are very vocal about wanting to change the industry that we work in.
That's a really great synopsis of what we're doing. I feel very fortunate to be building a firm, especially alongside a partner like Roman, where we recognize that everyone is human and we have the power now in our positions to bring that humanness into business. And we don't need to be completely separate people in our personal lives as we are in our work lives. And we can still have fun and be successful at the same time.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And, I do it the same way, but I'm boring in my personal life and boring in my accounting life. So it's just a different spin on that situation. But Stacey, can you take us back to the beginning? How did you come to the conclusion, wait a minute, I'm going to go and major in accounting?
Ooh, the beginning. Sure. I grew up as a very adventurous and ambitious child. And so I didn't have too much influence in my life of going to business school or, engineering or anything like that. But I did have a guidance counselor in high school who said, I think you'll be good at business. So I said, okay, where should I apply? That guidance counselor really pushed me to apply to a few top business schools out in New England. I grew up outside of Boston. So I kind of fell into business school. I had no idea what I was doing, didn't have much guidance there. But during my time in business school, they go through the core classes, and I had a tax professor my first semester of school. And he said, if you want to be successful in your career, you want to be an accountant. And so he said that the brightest students would be in his senior year tax course, corporate tax. So I took that and ran with it. I wanted to do the most challenging thing that I could in the space. And it turned out I was really good at it. And I had friends who hated it. I think there's a good division through academics where, it really makes sense or it doesn't. And for me, it caught on. So went through studies, worked really hard throughout college to get the Big Four accounting internships. I interned with PwC in Boston. Had a great internship, had a full-time offer in Boston as well after graduation. And during my junior year of college, I studied abroad in New Zealand. Again, going back to a lot of the adventurous roots, wanted to be outside and do a lot of the outdoor adventuring that I didn't really have access to in my youth. And during my time in New Zealand, I met a lot of folks who were from the US who lived in Colorado. And they told me that they have these mountains in the US. So you don't have to come to New Zealand to have this outdoor experience. So when I got back home, I wanted to be in Colorado. And, PwC told me that I could transfer to Denver a year after working in Boston, but that if I wanted to, I could go to the Denver office and they would set up a meeting with me for one of the partners. So I accepted that. And, at the time, I think, I had no money to my name, a college student. So buying a flight ticket from Boston to Denver was a big expense for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make the most of that trip. I had friends who worked at EY, and I got a meeting with a partner at EY that same trip. So I went to Denver, met with both teams. And when I was meeting with the EY team, they really were impressed by, I don't know, my conversation. You know nothing when you're in college. So I don't know what they were impressed with, but they gave me an offer on the spot, and they were willing to pay for the travel expenses for that trip. So it was really meaningful for me at that time to be able to transfer out to Denver and have that covered. So that was fun. I moved to Denver right after graduation, and my offer had a contingency of a year off to get my CPA license. So I had a year between graduation and when my offer would start, just to get the studies under my belt. During that time, I was living in Boulder, which is a fairly large startup market. There's quite a bit of startups here in the Boulder market. So I don't know why, but I wanted to get involved with startups. I knew that eventually post public, I wanted to work with startups. Again, I have no idea now looking back why that is. A friend of mine who worked at an outdoor magazine company, she said that there was this weird founder that would come into her office and take product photos because he was a friend of their CEO. She gave me his contact info, and that was the founder of PopSockets. PopSockets is a CPG phone grip company, started in Boulder in 2014. And so I met with the founder, and I expected this big meeting, first day meeting with the founder of a company. And I walk into his office, and he totally forgot we had a meeting set. He hadn't even shown up. So by the time he came, he had some of his yardscapers, landscapers, and people who were helping him with his house, helping him put these PopSockets together, which is the company he had just started and was really just getting it off the ground after their Kickstarter campaign. So, me being a bright-eyed, bushy-tail accountant graduate, thinking I'd come in and do finance and accounting, my first day there was just looking at a shipment of 10,000 plus units that were all damaged from the factory. So I was going through each of those units, checking out which ones are wonky, which ones we can sell, which ones we have to staple together to kind of get in the hands of customers. And that was my first day getting exposed to a startup company. Going through that process, one thing turned to another. They said, "Hey, you're smart. What more can you do for us? How much more time can you spend with us?" And all of that for me was with the background of my mind. I need to get back to my studies. This all comes second to me studying for the exams. I need to get back to this big girl job that I earned in Denver. And PopSockets got traction fairly quickly. And it got to a pivotal point where I needed to make a decision of whether I was going to go all in with the startup or kind of taper it off and focus on my studies. And I talked to my dad and my mom, and the biggest piece of advice they gave me at that time was that you can always go back into the big corporate world, but you may not have this type of opportunity again. And that's really what resonated with me. I can always go back and talk to that partner and try to get another internship or a job at one of the big four firms. So I decided to do it. And when I started, I think in 2020 or in 2014, we had about $8,000 in revenue that year. And when I left in 2020, I think our 2019 revenues were just sub 300 million. So we had grown quite sizably in about 5.5 years. And through that, right, lots and lots of learnings, very fast paced. I got the a lot of the exposure I got was through the lens of an entrepreneur or a founder because I was there so early and having to solve a lot of those issues, but with a lot less of the pressure of the founder or the entrepreneur head who may or may not have to make the payroll decisions. So really great experience in that time frame, and long-winded story of how I got there. And to kind of bounce forward to how I got to where I am today,
Well,
following that.
let's stop on that one quickly. I got lots of questions, and we're
Okay.
running ahead here. First, zero Boston accent, right? Like, if you didn't know that fact, there's no ways you're guessing, except when you said my mom, which I was
I
like,
was gonna say
there's the Boston right there.
it depends. If I'm talking to my mother, then the accent comes out. I
Okay.
don't know how I escaped that, but no, it comes out when I talk to my mom.
Yeah. And you think that's from the time in Colorado where it's just sort of they've broken your accent a little bit, or just
No, I think it just comes, I wasn't in the city. I was in, an hour outside the city. So I think I just got lucky and didn't have that accent.
it's interesting because I know some people from around the area as well, and they've been in California for a long time, and they've got the Californian accent, but there will be certain words, and you're like, oh yes, there it is. That there's
Well,
the
even
accent.
yours, I can hear your accent a little as well, just here and there.
Yeah, mine's definitely a little broken and all over the place. So I know the adjusting of the dialect that happens when you're in different places, and I had to because nobody understood a word when I first moved here. So I had some significant adjustments that needed to be made.
Love it.
But obviously, you were really smart, really impressive, and could clearly interview well if people are falling over themselves to hand you a job interview, and you know on the first attempt, which is amazing. Um, you know, it's no small feat to be able to get an offer from a big four. Like, it's just impressive from the get go. So that is amazing. I mean, I met you in person. It's only once I spoke to you, and I was super impressed just talking to you for 20 minutes with a roaring crowd behind us. It's what do you think? Like, what do you think set you up for that? What lessons did you learn as a kid, or what did your parents instill in you, or was it just ingrained in you from an early stage? Like, I got to be the best version of myself, and I'm just gonna be ambitious, try my best, and let's see what happens.
I think about this question a lot because my husband and I are planning to move into parenthood in the next phase of life and wanting to raise thoughtful, independent humans and reflecting back on how we got to where we are now. And I think I kind of credit it to the fact that my parents worked really hard. They worked full-time jobs, um, blue collar workers, and they didn't have much time to do a lot of things for me. I needed to take the steps to do them for myself. A good example is my mom, terrible at directions, right? It's so bad. And I played competitive soccer growing up. And so we need to go all over the state to drive to different soccer fields. And I needed to take the initiative to print out the MapQuest directions, at 7 years old, figure out where we are, what time we need to be there, what time we need to leave, make sure she's on schedule, and then, ask a random stranger on the street when we get lost, how do we get to the destination? So I think a lot of those initiatives as a child, I had to take myself to do the things I wanted to do. So a lot of freedom there. Outside of that, I'm not sure what else did. I mean, I was surrounded through my soccer career with other families who may have had things that we didn't have growing up. And so I was very interested in speaking with adults and always communicating with the older folks of what do you do? How do you do it? And I remember that was strange as a kid for the kid to be so interested in adult conversations. But I was never kind of put in the child corner from my parents. So that perhaps was a piece that instilled it at a young age.
So independence was provided to you. Go figure it out, and then just seem to be naturally curious, which a lot of times you see. I'm around kids all the time, parents all the time. Sometimes when kids are overly curious, people want to like, no, don't do that. Like you said, put them in the kids' corner.
Mhm.
I've learned that those curious kids are probably going to be, the big world changers back, in the future, and let them ask the questions. Let them,
Mhm.
give them as much honesty as you can to those. I mean, I know my wife gets cross with me because I'm a little too honest with my kids. So there's a line, and probably don't be like me, but have those conversations with the kids because clearly Stacey's a great example. She was curious and turned out pretty amazing. So I think, it's a lesson in itself, especially as you mentioned, you're going into that next stage of life and looking to start a family. It's something I have to remind myself: answer the questions, be honest with them, have real conversations with the kids. Or my favorite, I just tell them, if I'm not sure, go ask Alexa. She'll have an answer for you as well.
Love that. I wish I had an Alexa at that age too.
It's better than when I was growing up and I had to go look through big encyclopedias that were 10 years out of date, and the facts were no longer real facts at that point in time.
I think we kind of swung the other way in the pendulum, where you didn't know the truth because you didn't have access, and now we have too much information and sorting through what truly is the source
now
of truth.
We don't know the truth either, because there's
too
much false truths out there. Okay, so let's, PopSockets was obviously a big portion of your career, almost 6 years with them. Great opportunity. You tell the story that you almost stumbled and fell into it, but there's got to be a little bit more to that, right? Like, I guess you had to take the opportunity. Somebody gave you, like, hey, this is this person, and you had to have it in you to go ahead and just, sure, let me go talk to it. Let me go seize this opportunity. How did, what was your mindset when that opportunity came through? Because you say it so nonchalant, like, oh, just another day, but there had to be something going through your head, or especially oh, it's this crazy founder, let's go talk to them.
Well, I had my end goal in mind, is I wanted to work with startups. And at the time, I'd sent my resume out to so many different startups online and didn't have really ways to get conversations. So that was my next step of, who do I know that might know a founder, that might know someone who needs help in the startup area? I don't think any others really materialized. I worked at a food truck. I worked at a catering company. I worked weddings, but none of those were really the things that I wanted to do longer term. So finding that alignment, and you're right, I get this feedback a lot that even if some people had the opportunity I had, fewer would have decided to say no to that Big Four offer. To give you some context, Zane, I think out of school, my offer was like $55,000, benefits, all that fun stuff, very secure job, opportunity, growth, yada, yada. My job at PopSockets, is hourly at first, but on a salary basis, it was $29,000. No benefits, nothing existed. No future, question mark, if anything, if it would turn into anything. But the one piece I did fight for was an equity component. And thankfully, the founder was very generous and did recognize that I was spending a lot of time working with this company. So that was the other piece that made it worthwhile for me. But to go back to your original question of how I knew to even ask about it, I think it just goes back to me feeling very comfortable asking the question. I've never really been much intimidated by certain people of different stature or different roles. I think we all are people, and there's always a way to connect. And if you don't ask, you'll never know. So I've kind of kept that throughout my mantra of, that's how you and I met. I was like, hey, Zane, let's talk. And I think it's a really fun way to just get to know people and hear their story. And, maybe something will come of it. Or maybe you just meet someone else, and that can be fun as well.
Yeah. And just in the simple example, hey, you reached out to me, let's talk. And I said, sure, let's talk, right? It's a great opportunity. And I think people are sometimes so closed off to a new conversation, right? And you get it all the time, especially in the LinkedIn world. People are like, oh, I get all these crazy messages to my inbox, which is true. I do too. But sometimes, I get them and I'll be like, oh, it actually sounds a little interesting. I'm just going to take the conversation. Who knows what that could turn out to? And, it's led to client referrals. It's led to technology options. It's led to friendships, professional friendships. And I think sometimes we're always a little worried that it's always going to be somebody trying to trick us, or false hope, and I think sometimes, it's a good lesson right there to sometimes it's good to say yes. We don't always have to say no. Definitely don't always have to say yes, but evaluate the options that come with you, especially, in our situation, there's a little bit of verification. We sort of knew one person in common, so they're at least not terrible people. So let's meet and talk, right? And it can turn into a really great conversation. turn into different opportunities. And for you, obviously, turned out to an extremely amazing opportunity.
Well, it's
I
funny
am
you say that.
intrigued though by the way you sort of put it up on your LinkedIn profile, your online resume, that the first 2 years and 4 months, like your job title was first hire.
Well, that's because my real title was Director of Business Development, which did not make sense. I mean, I have an old business card if that's what it said, but I did know business development. It was just Jill of all trades doing absolutely everything. And in the early days, it was, I was one of the more senior people next to the founder, but people didn't know that because I didn't have a title. And so when we're working with big vendors or big partners, I needed something that had some clout to it and some status. Roles changed throughout that time, but first hire is what I went with because I think it better captures the essence of things that could fall into that bucket during that time.
No, I love the title of first hire because it really does explain the startup world, or at least the way I understand the startup world, right? You put it in there, managed a little of everything at this stage across finance, accounting, supply chain, HR, fulfillment, product, and customer success. And that, for me, that's what the essence of a startup is. There's people within the business. There's probably the person who's got the big idea. Then there's a person who, like, for lack of a better term, is that CEO, the person that's making everything operate in the background. And they're just touching everything and willing to touch everything, right? And I think that is clearly what sets you apart, is that you're willing to get in there, sort through a bunch of shipments to find ones that are actually worthwhile using, like get your hands dirty from day one. Like, that's impressive. That's what sort of a hard work comes through. That's what startup world is all about.
Yeah, I think now as we are growing, building FullSend, we do a lot of interviews, and in my past companies too, I've interviewed a lot of folks. And it's a very different mindset and different skill set to succeed in a startup environment versus a more structured environment that may already have established process and procedure. And not to say that one's better than the other. It's very important for us to, and I recommend to clients as well, be fully transparent in the interview process to make sure the candidate knows exactly what it entails as well, because the last thing I want is for someone to not know what they might expect, or have a misalignment with what they expect when they get inside the company. And then the other piece of that too is having a team that it is good people. You need, the founder of PopSockets is a very kind and patient and smart human. If he were condescending or, self-absorbed, I would not have had the experience I had. He gave me free rein. He needed the help. He let me run, let me make a lot of mistakes in the process. And that's what drives a good culture, where people can dig in and feel comfortable running with it versus feeling scared and a little bit timid in trying new things and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, it's really great advice. Building a good culture, one that supports each other through the good times and the bad times, allows people the room to learn. I think that, that right there, for anybody who's trying to start their own business, is when you're hiring people, part of it is trusting those people. And when you trust people, you have to understand that they're going to make mistakes. The same way as you, the person who's hiring them, you're going to make mistakes as well. And you would hope, if you've been trusting them, they'll trust you, that, that mistake's not the end of the world.
It's always the 80-20 rule, right? Someone, if you train them, may do it 80% as well as you would have expected to do it yourself. But 80% is still better than zero. And, having to let go really is something that propels growth versus limits it. And it's kind of a challenging thing for a lot of people, but having that trust and building the environment is what's going to set the company up for scale and success.
Okay. So just a little under 6 years with that adventure, and then you sort of moved on to a few controller roles after the fact, a couple of shorter stays along the way before getting to FullSend. Sort of what is the thought process of getting out of PopSockets? How did that sort of transition go for you?
One of the most exciting things for me at PopSockets was we were exploring an IPO, and lots of accounting and maturity that happened to get us to that point. So I was the lead on that project, and we decided it was time to not pursue that. So a lot of the more complex things that I was working on that I was really excited about, we kind of dwindled those down. So it was more kind of doing a lot of the same things that we were doing. So I decided it was probably time for me to explore what else is out beyond PopSockets, because really that's all I ever knew. That's where I went. My next move was to a natural foods company. The company had been around quite some time, longer standing company. I learned a lot in that process there, but unfortunately, I only ended up staying as a full-time hire for 6 months because that longer company had a less of an appetite to change process, to change things, adopt new ways of thinking, new softwares. And if I've learned anything, it's much harder to change behaviors and character traits than it is to change a process. So, a lot of lessons learned in that step in my career, more so how to interview people and what their visions are and where they're intending to go with a company. I consulted with them for about a year after that time, just to kind of ease the transition for them, and which I switched back to another early stage startup. And this startup, unfortunately, when I got in, the financial metrics weren't as strong as I thought they were, but prior to moving internal. And really, if it were me, I wouldn't have hired a controller. I probably would have kept an outsourced partner for the firm or for the company for a longer period of time before bringing that person in house. And it was clear to me when I joined that startup that I shouldn't have been hired at that role. There wasn't enough value that I was providing for where they were at in their trajectory. So from there, that company eventually, shortly after I left, unfortunately went under. And again, great lessons learned in this process. It's not wasted time by any means. I learned a lot in those two ventures. But from there, I connected back with a few of my colleagues from PopSockets who went to a different startup called Sunday Lawn Care, which is it's a product company that does natural lawn care subscription model. So better for the planet, better for the earth. And they were on a really great VC-backed trajectory. Controller there brought a lot of process in place, and I loved it. It was a great place. I loved being there. I had a great team. I had, a lot of fun in the startup space, was making a lot of improvements, putting process in place, getting ready for growth. Potential IPO on the track 2 was kind of our end goal. Everything was great. And, in the back of my mind, I kept saying to myself that I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to build something and I want to own it and kind of grow with it. And, while my controller role at Sunday was so great, I always had this thing in the back of my head, which I believe was from having somewhat of that founder experience at PopSockets, and having that like blood, sweat, and tear into something that you feel really passionate about. But I couldn't figure out how to do it. I'm an accountant. I have a lot of external accountant skills, but I don't invent things. I'm not going to create something. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. So I couldn't draw that line from how do I build a company, but also use my CPA skills. I didn't know where to go from there. Yep. So I was, having a great time at Sunday and doing that. And that was kind of the little chirp in the back of my mind. And that was when, it's funny you said earlier that you should always say yes to the LinkedIn message, or, if you find a LinkedIn message. But Roman, founder of FullSend, posted on LinkedIn. He said, "I'm looking for an entrepreneurial accountant." And that was his post. I messaged Roman on LinkedIn and I said, "Hey, you started FullSend 6 months ago. I'd love to learn what you're doing. Like, let's connect. I just want to learn more." And that was it. He and I connected on a phone call, probably that week. And we had just an exciting and like invigorating conversation around what he's doing, how we could build it, what I could contribute, how we could grow this thing. And for me, it was this light bulb of excitement of blending my two experiences of entrepreneurship and then my skills of accounting. I just had no idea that this world of outsourced accounting existed. I had no idea. That was probably January of 2023 when he and I had that conversation. And I joined full time March of 2020. That was March of 2023. Joined full time, and so I've been here just over a year and a half now. And it was Roman and I from the start. He had a part-time accountant to help, but now we've got 10 full-time employees, and we've launched a data and intelligence service alongside our finance and accounting service. And in that year and a half, we've been having so much fun ideating and building, connecting with people in the industry. I feel so grateful to have found this community of people who do the same thing that I do. And I couldn't have been more happy to have moved into this as my kind of next step in my career.
So 100% you guys have sort of taken the accounting world by storm. You definitely are everywhere. And it's
Well, Roman's
for a good
a
reason,
LinkedIn
right?
influencer.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen clips of you talking, and I only heard great things at Scaling New Heights about the sessions that you were part of. So, he might be doing it on the LinkedIn, but you're the one in person who's just rocking it out as well. So the group in general are doing some amazing things, just sending a really great message, and really has taken the accounting world by storm. And it's been great to see sort of, you know, I like to call myself a friend of the firm, even though I'm just this random stalker in the background. But it is always wonderful to see what you guys are doing and how you're doing it. It's very, very impressive.
Thank you. It's so much fun. And I feel very grateful as well because, Roman and I have such complementary skill sets. And it feels like we've just kind of found each other in the market. And it was so perfect for a partnership to come together where he's focused on sales, external BD, partnerships, and then I focus on internal execution, client relationships, and the internal team. And it's been a very exciting partnership to, like I said earlier, build the thing that we want to build and do it in the way that puts the human first, beyond anything else.
Right. So do you see yourself as an entrepreneur now?
I think so. I'm not like, I don't know. I'm not big on titles and things like that. I don't fully see myself as an entrepreneur, but I see myself as in the driver's seat to build something really great, which is what I wanted.
That's an interesting response. I'm almost 11 years into this thing, and I still don't think of myself as an entrepreneur. I just see myself as an accountant who happens to be running something that I started. And I don't really think about it in that same way. And maybe that's just because we're all brainwashed by entrepreneurs, somebody who's creating something amazing,
Yeah.
which you guys are. So, you do tick that box off, and not be something sort of fashionable that people can carry around and be like, look, I've got this cool product. But from what I can see, you're helping your clients, you're building a great culture, and you guys are making sure you're having fun along the way, which I think is probably the most important part of it is right there, is that you guys are having fun.
I'm curious how fun has played into your firm, if at all, if that's been a piece of it that you've grown with, of kind of that human piece, or what your experience is there.
I would say yes, but in a different way, mostly because I'm just not the funnest person in the world. And that's, just, I'm more robotic than I am a human. So it's hard for me to put the human first, but we look after our people. We understand what our people are. I've always been big on creating an environment where people feel comfortable. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we do a great job at it. Our turnover ratios are very, very low. We're having
Mm-hmm.
people that, the company's 10 years old, and there's people that have been with us over 8 years. So they've been with
I
us for
think
a long time.
that's fun is one piece of it, but building a good culture is not just having fun. You can have fun, but also be miserable. I think that's more important, is building a culture where people are satisfied in their role and they want to stay around. So don't beat yourself up too much on that.
Yeah, I always like to call it the Protea cult. Try to get them in and keep them around for a long time. So, just a different way to look at it. It's more,
Mm-hmm.
I try to lead with kindness. I think that, that's the sort of way we go with it. I encourage people to do things. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time accountants are all hard work and
Mm-hmm.
forget that we have other, other things going on in our life, other passions, other things that we love. Like, it's okay
Yeah.
to have a creative outlet. just because we're an accountant doesn't mean you can't be a musician or an actor or anything like that. For me, it's spending time with my kids, it's coaching soccer, it's watching sport. I
Yeah.
probably don't run as much and exercise as much as I used to, but that, pre-kids, I would do that a ton. But now I'd rather just hang out with them in the backyard than, go
And you're
spend
going
2
to
hours on the
be
mountain.
way more productive in your workday if you have the space in your agenda in your life to do that thing you love versus feeling like you're overworked, overtired, then also not filling that cup at home, right? You kind of is not going to be a long-term success for anyone at that point. So I agree. We push that as well, of having that balance and doing the thing you love outside of work.
Yeah, and you sort of put the definition right there of like what I see balance as well, right? It's everybody thinks balance is like working a certain amount of hours and then having all these hobbies and doing it, but it's more really knowing what's important to you and identifying that. For me, it's work's important, my family's important, spending time with my kids is important, exercising is important, cooking dinner for my family is important, right? So those are the things that are important for me. And then I make sure that I either do them daily or weekly, depending on what my schedule looks like. And sometimes that's going to be 10 minutes, sometimes that's going to be 2 hours. And that's okay because different parts of your life are going to need different amounts of your time at different periods in time. That doesn't mean you've lost balance. It's just giving priority to the area that needs you the most at that point in time. And as long as you keep focused on all those things that are important for you, you will feel satisfied. You probably won't feel that stressed. I wander around stress-free all the time. Like I really do. Like I don't stress about much. And it drives my wife nuts. But it's because I'm very clear on what's important to me and I make
Yep.
sure I find time for it. So all the other stuff is just noise.
I think, well, you leading with that from, as the owner of your firm, that trickles down, right? Even if it's indirect and not explicit to the team, they recognize that you're offline, that you're putting other priorities first. And those are the unspoken things that are very important in building a strong culture to, show your team that they're able to do that too. And I think the optics of being a leader, being an entrepreneur, is sometimes understated in certain cultures of how important it is to lead by example.
For sure. So how do you show your team the way to find balance? How do you show them how you live the FullSend lifestyle?
We have a FullSenders Slack channel, and it's the sole purpose is for everyone to just send photos of what did they do on their weekend, what did they do in their afternoon, how did they spend their time away from work, and I contribute to that just as much as the rest of the team. I was doing mountain bike races in the spring here in Colorado, and they were Wednesday afternoons. And so I had to leave work at 2 p.m. to get up to the mountain, get prepped for the race and be there. And I blocked my calendar off and said, I'm out of office. And it's small things like that that show the team that it's okay. And then we have bigger initiatives too. We have our FullSend Fund, which is an annual fund for employees to have money to do the things that they want to do. And we advocate for those, we promote them. So for example, one of our employees right now just took a trip to Poland, and she's from Poland. She bought her flight ticket from Poland to Portugal with her FullSend Fund. And we said, hey, everyone, this is what the employee did with her FullSend Fund. If you haven't used yours, get out there, tell us how you're using it. And it's small ways like that we try to promote the outside of life fun that we're all having, outside of work fun that we're all having.
So you race mountain bikes? That's pretty crazy.
I do. It's new for me. But I will say mountain bike races, they have all these classes. There's beginner, intermediate, sport, pro, advanced. So it's not like you need to be a sponsored pro athlete to join these races.
I get it. I took my kids through to the pump track for the first time, and my 8-year-old, my oldest one, decided to just go like full speed down these things and fell, split his chin open. Don't think he'll ever be going back. His gymnastics coach says, good gymnasts don't get injured, so maybe not the greatest place to be spending your time. But
Oh.
I won't lie, I went on the kids pop truck, and I was like, "Geez, this is a little scary. This is I think I'm gonna stick to the trail running. I don't mind charging down a hill or control of my own feet, but this piece of machinery, I don't trust myself too much."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I love it. It's a great hobby my husband and I do together. So it's been really fun to have that as an outlet for both of us and spend more time together.
Yeah, and you're obviously in a great part of the world. Some of the best mountains around. Trail running, mountain biking, just general hiking. Great place to get out and do all those things.
We love it.
Yeah, we did some fun stuff out here in Marin County as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
the home of mountain biking, where it was originally founded. But it's a little beyond my ability as I knock on 40's door.
Well, it's also good for the running mountains, so you've got that going.
Yeah, it's always a good way to do it. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about what is data intelligence.
Yes. So we brought on in April of this year Megan Villar. She is a data consultant. She's worked her career in data consultancy primarily for big companies. So typically, companies will get to a certain size. They'll have data teams who are working on specific data projects and data infrastructure for the company. And the consulting firms usually help with projects for these bigger companies. And what Megan realized is that in the market, there's this gap for solving for the small business, the SMBs, for data strategy. And a lot of that, what that means is building the internal infrastructure of what you have at your company in a way that provides you clear insights and actionable reporting. As an example, we are rebuilding our internal data infrastructure at FullSend to standardize our accounting service SKUs. So we look at the items that we sell across the business. Those are in a data warehouse housed alongside client data, who the client is, multitude of different factors about the client, paired with, connected internally across all of our systems. So for us, what that can do is we can leverage reporting around what are our client margins? What's the timeline for onboarding? And we can have just real-time reporting metrics that are available based on whatever we need to measure, right? We build those out based on the individual company or firm. Now, this can span, it's almost limitless how this can span across different companies. I can put it into perspective for, let's say, a wine company that maybe you're working with. If a wine company is doing something manually, let's say as a CPG company, they need to manually purchase certain raw materials. Maybe it's grapes based on different volume season that they're working in. But for the grow season. And maybe what they're doing is pulling real-time sales data, comparing that to inventory on hand, drafting up a purchase forecast, and then putting a purchase order out to their vendors. Well, data can do that for you automatically. It can pull all of those manual inputs that are happening throughout the process and create some sort of, through data science, some sort of metric or forecast that can then automate the purchase process or tell you what you need to purchase and when. So those are two very specific examples, but the examples are limitless around, I think we try to look at any manual process that a company is doing that's taking a lot of time, maybe not yielding high value, or key financial metrics that a company needs but is waiting a really long time for because they need the financials closed, or the accounting team is a bit slower. Those are things that data can help solve for and make it a lot faster and more actionable.
Great. Assuming, especially in the startup world, that speed's important. So being able to offer that additional service and speed up their processes, speed up their decision-making processes, it can really help out.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of companies, early stage companies, don't think about data infrastructure or data strategy until they get to a critical point. So that's the piece in the market that we want to solve for, because it's a heck of a lot easier to build a strong data warehouse earlier than it is to kind of unravel things as they are later in the process. So a lot of what we're trying to do is build education around the exact question of what is data and intelligence, it's different for everyone. And we're still, since it's a new business line for us, we're still defining what that is. We're still working through how do we market it to clients, and how do we identify specific niches that might benefit from this in our early stage.
Makes a lot of sense. So Stacey, you've had a really successful career to date, but I know we all go through challenges. It's not all just smooth sailing. So what would you say has been the biggest challenge that you've faced in your career to date, and how did you overcome that?
Startups are hard. I could pull 30 different examples from my time at PopSockets alone of challenges that I was faced with and things that were difficult. Trying to pinpoint one specific is really hard.
Well, what happens if we turn it more in this way? Has there ever been a time during this road of success where you just really started doubting yourself? Things just seem to be going the wrong direction a lot of the time, and you sort of went, gosh, have I been doing the right thing the whole time, or have I just been running down the wrong path? Has that ever come up for you before?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first company I left to after PopSockets, I was filled with self-doubt. Just what did I do? What have I done? Am I even talented? I left PopSockets with such confidence in what I could do, what I could accomplish, and was really confident in what I had accomplished, and then fell flat on my face. And I didn't know how to interview. I didn't know how to ask the right questions. I didn't know how to run away from certain red flags that were very prevalent. And during that process, you always self-reflect and think that it was something we all did wrong, and that we're not worthy or we're not good enough. And that was very much 2020 was a hard year for me during COVID and having that experience. It was really difficult. But I leveraged the people in my network. I leveraged my past mentors, and I, talked through these problems very specifically with people that I knew. One, to get confidence back that it wasn't just me not knowing what I don't know, but it was how to come out the other side, what steps I needed to take to get back on my feet and find the right place where I could make an impact.
The power of community, having a good support structure around you and leveraging them when you need it. And, I think we all find it very easy to leverage our community when things are going well, but it takes a lot of bravery to use it in the tough times. And that's when we really need them, right? Like, that's why we're developing those relationships for the tough times.
Well, that's what I'm also most excited about this network that I found in the accounting community, is that it seems to be so open, and there's so many resources, and there's so many people who have gone through the things that we've gone through, and most people are just willing to help one another. So I'm trying my best to leverage that, offer my experience to others, and to the best extent that I can help. But we all go through it, and it's hard to be vulnerable. But ask for help. To talk through the stinky experiences that we're having, and try to get to the other side.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've received lots of messages from people in my LinkedIn before, emails just saying, hey, I'd love to talk about how you did this sort of thing. I've never said no. I always say yes. I didn't really keep track very well of what I did along the way, so I just have to rely on my memory, but I'm happy to talk through it. I like to hear the sound of my own voice, so I'm happy to jump on a call and help you problem solve. So I think, and that's not just me, like, I'm happy to do it, but there's plenty of people out there as well. I know I can drop a message to a bunch of people and they'll get back to me within a period of time, give their insight, or say, hey, sorry, I just don't know, maybe talk to this person. And it's using that community when you need it in the right way, but make sure you're giving back at the same time.
Absolutely. That's the key piece. You gotta give as much as you take.
Stacey, what are your short-term goals for yourself, for FullSend? I mean, I know you shared got some family coming. You guys are building some new business lines at FullSend. But what does the short-term look like for you?
Short term at FullSend, we're so focused on building this firm that we love. We think about our corporate objectives, how fast we want to grow, and those initiatives, they are all second to building this FullSend culture. We're very in tune with that and making sure that we are not that we are practicing what we preach in market. That's the biggest goal we have. I think we haven't set our 2025 goals yet. That's a Q4 thing. So it's a little bit fluid there of what we specifically want and how much we want to grow next year. Just keeping a pulse on, are we happy and is our team happy? And are we building a firm that people enjoy working at? That's the big short-term objective that we have. On the personal side, yeah, family planning in the next couple of years, go down that path and have some fun there.
You keep racing on a Wednesday night?
I don't have any races lined up anymore, but we'll see what next year looks like.
Well, you guys, I mean, you'll move into the snow season soon, right? I'm sure the
Very
plans
sad.
change a little bit then. Can you share with me the best piece of advice you've ever received that's helped you with your success to this point in time?
I don't know where I heard this, and I have grasped onto it and taken it for myself now. It's passing on to others. Is the quote, "Do it scared. Do it scared. Send that message. Do that task. Take that step." I love the mantra of "do it scared." It can be applied in so many different areas in our life, work and personal, and it's the perfect mantra for us entrepreneurs doing a bunch of new stuff and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, sort of it ties in. Can't quite see it over there. That says just start, ask questions
Just start.
later. Yeah,
Ask questions later. Yes, exactly.
yeah. Sometimes you just got to get going, right? And
Mm-hmm.
doing it scared. It's a lot of time you find success when you are going scared because it feels uncomfortable, which is a good thing. It means you're testing yourself. You're learning something new. As I tell my boys all the time, just it might be a bit scary. Just do it. I know you can.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a go. And they're either going to fall and hurt themselves or they're going to do it. But either way, they're learning something along the way.
The best lessons are learned from the worst experiences.
Yeah, sad but true.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Is there any advice as you've gone into this world of creating your own accounting firm? Is there any advice that you wish you had received before you started out that maybe would have sort of changed the way you've done things at the very beginning?
At the very beginning of building FullSend specifically, it's actually the opposite of what we hear a lot of people recommend. It's a contentious topic of whether or not to have a partner in the space. And every single day, I am grateful that I have a sounding board and someone who is on my level that I can talk through all of the problems that we have going on, and they get it, and they're not, passing judgment, and they're sharing in that load. Having a sounding board is so important, and just talking through these issues that otherwise, if I were on my own, I'd have a lot more mental burden than sharing that with Roman.
Yeah, that is always interesting. I mean, it comes back to what you've mentioned a few times is just having a good community, having a good support structure, leveraging the people around you. And I'm very thankful I have good business partners as well. I have the ones that aren't accountants and don't bother me and let me get on with my day-to-day business, but they're there when I have questions, when I have concerns, when I've got an idea and I need to make sure that I'm not totally nuts before I start actioning it. It's having that person that I can turn to and be like, "What do you guys think?" It makes a big difference.
I agree.
It doesn't. I don't think either of us is saying you need to have a business partner, but I guess what we are saying is have that sounding board, have that support network, because it is tough. Don't let anybody out there fool you. Running an accounting business, let alone starting an accounting business, is not for the faint of heart.
Any business, yeah. I mean, it's a certain personality and a certain skill set who's willing to get dirty and do what needs to be done day by day. Changes every day.
Do the people that you guys work with, your clients, do they appreciate that you've got that startup like background and that you've been there and done it and got your hands dirty?
I think so. Even in scoping calls, I'm not a salesperson, so I don't know how to sell. I just talk to clients as if I were going through the same problems that they have. And it allows us to connect very quickly. And I think it builds a lot of trust in us being able to come in and service them, and knowing that we know the challenges they're focused on, and how to be that sounding board or to focus on the right things. There's a lot of problems that come up for startups, and it can be very challenging to prioritize those. So we do provide that sense of support for our clients in prioritizing those items that should be focused on now versus it's not a priority yet. Think about that later.
Do you see yourself as a leader?
I do.
Yeah. I always like to ask that question because, I look at a piece of paper and I go, you've been in a leadership position pretty much since day one of your career. And, early starter, a founder, at a startup with the founder right next to them, gone to jobs in a controller position, which straight away you've got some sort of leadership role. You gotta, you gotta lead that team forward. And now you're running your own business. So clearly you're doing something right along the way, else you wouldn't be where you are at the moment. And I know the people around you trust you, believe in you, and that's a good sign of a leader. But what advice would you give people out there that are trying to grow their leadership quality? What advice would you give them to allow them to be better leaders?
I always approach leading my team with sharing the burden, and it always goes back to, if I think about one of my favorite leaders in my career at PopSockets, we're there till 11 p.m. and he can't help us. He doesn't have the skill sets to actually do the work that we're doing, but he's sitting there, he's available for questions, he's there to support, and he's there to remove blockers for the folks above him that can help us get there. So I learned a lot from him in leadership, and I tend to take that as well, of how can I be present for my team, hear their issues, and remove blockers for them to succeed and continue to do their best work.
Yeah, that's great advice. I do love that, specifically the point of being available. And as you're saying that, like, just some of the best people that I worked for, the best people who I really looked up to, they were the people that would be there working the late hours with us. Even if they weren't working the late hours, they were just there because they knew the team needed the support. They needed to know that they weren't alone.
Sharing that burden is the best, it's best.
Stacey, this has been really amazing, and I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I know you've got a busy life as well, and you've got things to go. You need to go live that FullSend life. And I do appreciate the time today. And at Protea Conversations, we do like to end with some rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So if you're ready, I've got 5 questions for you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Number 1, what is your dream vacation?
The mountains of Colorado, sitting on a field with the sunset available and a river somewhere, and mountain biking with my husband.
Sounds amazing. Do you prefer audiobooks or paper books?
Paper books.
What's the last book you read?
I don't know. The EOS traction book is currently what I'm reading right now.
That's a good one. If you only had 20 minutes to exercise, what would you do?
Olympic weightlifting.
What is your favorite piece of technology that you're currently using to make your life better?
Notion.
What is that?
Notion's a productivity platform, so we use it for all internal documentation on notes, process, client information, everything outside of the daily task workload is in Notion, and we love it. Great for vacation planning as well.
I think that's what my wife is using at the moment. I do all of that up in my head, which is probably not a great long-term strategy.
That's why you haven't been on vacation in a while.
No, every summer.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Last rapid fire question. What was your favorite meal growing up?
Oof. It was called Hungry Jack. I can't even eat it today, but it was baked beans with ground beef, then layer of dinner rolls topped with cheddar cheese. Bake that up. My dad tried to make it for me probably a year ago. I can't even fathom the thought of it, but I loved Hungry Jack growing up.
It sounds absolutely amazing. I'm like, do I have those ingredients in my house right now? I want to go make that.
Baked beans.
And with that, we end another Produce Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today we gained insight from our guest and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Produce Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on my social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love for you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence and embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Produce Conversations.